Hey guys. So jazz is a promiscuous partner. It's happy to shack up with any other genre and borrow elements from it. Jazz arose out of blues music, so it's only natural that as blues music evolved into rhythm and blues, soul, funk, rock and roll, rock, hip hop, jazz split out into new subgenres, each influenced by those styles. And for this reason, it's worth talking a little bit about funk piano, as funk has had quite a big influence on jazz since the 1970s. In particular, it's influenced styles like jazz fusion, jazz funk, and free funk. So first, a bit of history. Funk arose in the 1960s and 70s out of soul music. Specifically, it took soul music and made it more intense, energetic, aggressive, and rhythmic. Now, harmonically, funk is quite similar to jazz. It uses complex extended chords, so you'll see a lot of ninths, 11ths, and 13ths, but it often used quite simple chord progressions, often sitting on a one or two note vamp for an entire song. So this gave funk a kind of modal or even somewhat atonal quality, which you also see in jazz all the time. But using that simple chord progression, again, often just one or two chords, the band would set up a groove by playing the chords using a repeating pattern or riff or vamp, and often one that introduced a bit of chromaticism into the harmony, like side slipping, and some syncopation, which I'll talk to in a minute. And funk songs would typically use the Dorian or Mixolydian modes rather than the traditional major-minor keys. Now, melodically, funk often had relatively simple melodies in terms of, the notes used, the pitches, but ones that were rhythmically interesting, which again I'll get to in a minute. But it was similar to jazz in that funk songs often included improvisation. And of course, the bass or the bass line in a funk song is incredibly important and often serves as the foundation of the entire song. So a funky bass line is really what holds everything together. The bass line is really what makes a song sound quintessentially funky. In terms of the form, funk songs would often use an open form, where the band would just sit and play over a single repeating groove until the vocalist or the improviser indicated that they were finishing and that we should change to another section. But the most important element in funk music is the rhythm. And the rhythm is really what sets funk apart from all other styles of music. So in funk, the rhythm is more important than harmony or melody. Now, most of the styles that came before funk used a relatively fast tempo and subdivided the bar into 8 notes, so using eighth notes. And a really good example of this is rock and roll that had a really steady eighth note feel. So rock and roll was played with a straight feel, but you could still get that same eighth note subdivision with a swing rhythm. Right, so most of the music before funk generally had an eighth note feel, whether or not the eighth notes were played straight or swung. Now, funk changed this. Funk music slowed down the tempo, which then allowed musicians to break the bar into 16th notes. So instead of 2 notes per beat, we now have 4 notes per beat. Right? 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So by slowing down the tempo, we can now get more notes in per beat. And while funk is still played with a backbeat, that is, there is still an emphasis, usually played with a snare drum, on beats 2 and 4, there is also greater emphasis placed on the first beat of each bar, called the 1. And this would often be done with a strong kick or cymbal crash on beat 1 of every bar or every second bar. So even though we keep the backbeat with the snare drum on 2 and 4, we really land hard on the 1. And because downbeats, especially the 1, 2, and 4, are so strong and emphasized in funk music, that gives instruments the freedom to play with a lot more syncopation and still be able to keep a really steady and driving beat. So in summary, rhythm in funk should use 16th notes, emphasize the 1 beat, and use quite a bit of syncopation. So then to play something funky on the piano, we want to play a strong and driving bass line in our left hand. Remember, the bass line is really what holds a funk song together. You really want a really funky and strong bass line that's quite low, quite deep. You really want a nice bassy sound. And that bass line, as we just said, should emphasize the 1 beat. So you really want to play something, often a root note, on the 1, and use a 16th note rhythm or feel to create a little bit of syncopation. And in our right hand, we want to include some 16th notes, either in our melody, in our chords, or in our improvisation. But to get a 16th note sound, you don't actually need to play 4 notes per beat. Just like to get a swing feel, you don't need to play triplets all the way through. Not all 16th notes are created equal. As an analogy, only playing on the beat does not indicate whether you are playing in a swing or a straight rhythm. You really need to play an 8th note off the beat to hear where it lands, and whether it lands in the middle or a bit delayed to the right, that will indicate whether you're playing a swing or a straight rhythm. So it's really the offbeat note that determines or gives you a swing feel. Now similarly, you can't get a 16th note feel from the 1st and 3rd 16th note, because this is where your 8th notes would land anyway. So really, it's the 2nd and 4th 16th note in a beat that really gives you that 16th note feel. So in your bass line and in your either melody or chords, you really want to make sure you include those 2nd and 4th 16th notes occasionally throughout the bar, because that's what's really going to give you a 16th note feel. And as an added benefit, that's what's going to give you a really nice syncopated feel, because you're going to be playing off the beat a lot. So now let's use the song Sunny as an example. So first I'm going to play it with a swing feel. So we're going to be subdividing the bar into 8th notes, and I'm going to be swinging those 8th notes. And now let's do the same song, but this time with a funky groove. So as I play this, pay attention to me playing root notes and really landing those root notes on beat 1 of each bar, and using 16th notes, especially that 2nd and 4th 16th note throughout the bass line, as well as in the chords and the melody. Cool, so hopefully you noticed that the left hand was really holding all of that together with that really funky bass line. So it was hitting root notes really hard on beat 1 to really emphasize the 1. It was playing 16th notes, especially that second and fourth 16th note, and it had a nice syncopated feel because of those 16th notes that we're putting in. And the right hand also was playing the chords with 16th notes at the beginning and the end before going on to the melody. And when you're improvising, you really want to do the same thing. You want to make sure you have a good amount, a healthy amount of 16th notes in your improvisation to really set up that 16th note groove, all the while your left hand keeps playing that funky bass line and keeps really hitting the 1 real hard. Cool, and that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you found that somewhat interesting, and I will see you next time. Bye.